Should we call the, we'll let him pass those out and then we'll call the order here.
What's that?
We're getting ready to call the order, so go ahead and pass those out real quick.
All right. It's not gonna take me long.
Are we streaming, Mary?
And I've already had the COVID, so I'm safe. I got the antibodies.
Oh, you don't even need the mask then.
I do because I'm hacking my brains out today.
Oh, for other coronaviruses.
Yeah.
Was that already?
Yeah.
You get the invite? Oh,
Yeah.
congrats. How'd you have it? How bad?
Not bad. What I got now is worse than COVID.
All right, I'm going to call this meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. Okay, Supervisor Gannering is excused and Supervisor Berg is excused for the meeting today. Notice that I got to read off here. This agenda was posted in the office of the county clerk on the 15th day of October 2020. Notice was sent to the West Bend Daily News, Express News, WIBD, WMBZ Radio, WTKM Radio, My Community Now, Hartford Times Press, Kewaskum Statesman, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Okay, let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so first thing on the agenda is the consent agenda. Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Moved by Supervisor Marquardt, second by Supervisor Milliken. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, and the consent agenda is approved. Okay, first thing we have is the radio project update. So I'll turn things over to the sheriff's office for that.
Well, good morning. So the first thing I wanted to do is just kind of brief the Public Safety Committee on the progress that we've made in phase. It's kind of phase 2 of the radio project. We're in stage 1 or phase 1 of the phase 2, but just kind of bring you guys up to date where we're at. So what I'm going to do is have Captain Stacer bring you up to speed along with our radio consultant.
Oh, good morning. Dennis Burkle, who also is with us today. He's our project manager for this project. I just wanted to just kind of go over the goals of this radio project again. The goals of this project was to try to get 700 coverage throughout the entire county, 100% mobile and 95% on a portable radio at the hip. Sure. Okay. We also wanted to build a new microwave ring to tie it together. And then we wanted to nullify the monthly leases that we currently have on 2 of the towers. So 2 of the towers are privately owned and we have leases on those towers. And so part of the goal here was to nullify those, build our own towers where we can get out of those monthly leases. We've currently met with the town of Erin preliminarily. We had our engineer go out to their site and draw up some plans of what we think one of our towers might look like. We are prepared to recontact their town chair and present those at some point in the future. We're meeting with the village of Kewaskum on Monday night, November 2nd, to talk about replacing that current structure up there with a 150-foot monopole type tower. So we'll be meeting with them Monday night to start those stages. And then we've looked at numerous options throughout the county and even one in Wazaki County as far as radio towers, to try to tie this all together and try to look at what Washington County is going to get the best bang for its buck. And I guess that's a good segue to lead to Dennis can kind of update us and tell us where we're at on that.
So we hired our engineering firm out of Madison, Arlen of Edge Consulting, and we have drawing packages on each and every site.
Okay,
We've got,
is the microphone picking him up? What?
I got to click
I
the
just want to
button.
make sure for the feed.
Test. There we go.
Yeah, just for the feed, because
Yeah.
the live stream only picks up what the microphones pick up.
All right.
So, yeah.
So basically, we got drawing packages for every site with the exception of Germantown, which we went and did a site visit and we got that drawing package in tow right now. One of the reasons this phase has taken longer is one, we had the COVID situation. And secondarily, we wanted to get rid of the lease sites, save the county money. And thirdly, we ended up segueing off to 2 other sites. We looked at Newburgh way back when, we looked at Yar, and now we're looking at a site that Ozaki would share with Washington and Pinnacle, which would actually give them aid on their west side of their county and give Newburgh aid on Washington's side, and you could share costs. So currently, that's why we've sort of been delayed with this COVID and these growing packages. Rob alluded to the fact that we need to go meet with Kewaskum on November 2nd. And that could be 150 to 180 foot monopole, depending on if they'll let us use that same footprint. We understand they're moving, so we'll find out more about November 2nd. And then after we conclude the drawing packages, then we'll actually get into the meat and potatoes and do the structural analysis to see which towers actually passed and which failed due to the fact that you added antennas and certain heights. Then we'll have to do the, the strengthening and like we did on the last project. So that's going to be coming up here shortly. And then we also wound up our frequency coordinator, which is Carl Goosey, who ran your states for years. And he'll be acquiring us some more additional 700 frequencies. And then we could turn some of our VHF frequencies over to that fine Region 54 down in Joliet, Illinois. There's already an arrangement that they're working on getting us some frequencies. So that'll be the next phase after structurals, frequencies, and then of course we're going to have to build all the sites out. And potentially Aaron would be a new site, Pinnacle would be a new site. There'd have to be an intergovernmental agreement between Ozaki, who's going to pay for what as far as that goes, and their land. And then we could actually purchase the radio equipment and start the whole 700 meg thing out.
Okay, questions so far?
Just one thing I wanted to add with, that we're really trying to explore things that save the county money in long term and their governmental agreements. We're kind of working with the town of Erin. Ozaki County may be a very, very good platform for us where we can share costs for a single tower. One of the things I do want to just put on your radar is we alluded to Kewaskum and the need to replace that tower with a monopole. So the existing tower site is located on the municipal property just adjacent to the police department and library complex up there. They apparently have some building plans where they're contemplating moving that building to their annex. That's right near where the 9/11 memorial is, kind of on the back side of it. They're contemplating building a new police department, library, administration building, so that's a discussion we have to have. It's more cost effective and probably more efficient for us to keep the tower location where it's at. But if they get rid of that property, there's talk of maybe selling it to the school district for additional parking and demolishing the structure there. But there could be some costs associated with if we have to move the tower site over to the new location where they want to build the police departments. It'd be better for us to keep it there. So maybe we can even explore us purchasing a small portion of that property, and so we can keep the tower there. So what the game plan would be is next to the existing tower site, we would simply erect the monopole and not have to. We'd be able to keep the old system up and running until we switch everything over to the new tower. If we have to move the tower site completely, that might be more problematic for the transition. So just to keep that in your radar, that might be a little blip in our radar.
Okay, and I think we had talked in the past. Is there some thought about renting out the towers to like cell phone providers to provide some revenue?
Yeah, so the towers that we be in discussion for right now, like Aaron's a good example. Aaron, we rent, so it's on town of Aaron property that American Transmission has a tower that they pay rent to the town of Aaron, and they have various cell phone carriers on that particular tower. We we pay rent to American Transmission, not to the town of Erin. So if we were to erect a tower on that site, and we're kind of working through that process now, we'd have to have some agreement with the town of Erin not to disrupt their revenue stream for the tower that's there, just to make sure that that's not interrupted. But there's certainly some potential for that. In that particular case, in most of these cases, we don't own the land that it's on, we own the tower, but not the land. So we'd have to share the revenue with whichever municipality
Yeah,
has the tower on their site.
yeah, but I'm sure the municipalities would be happy to have the extra revenue as well. So,
Yes,
Yeah.
it's just a matter of fine tuning those agreements. We have those
Yeah.
types of agreements with the village of, the fire department in Richfield right now, where it's our own tower, and it's their land. So there's certainly potential for that.
okay. And then when I look at the coverage map here, it doesn't show the Newburgh site, Pinnacle. I'm assuming that's just off the map here. So that'd be an 11th tower, right?
I think the one here shows Yar Park, and if
Okay,
Yar it's going to be either or. So it could be Yar, it could be Pinnacle. Pinnacle would be kind of, I think, just to the southeast of Newburgh.
okay. Yep. And then I look at a big gap in this map around the town of Jackson. With the cell phone, with the towers where they're configured, are we gonna have coverage for our deputies when they're in the town of Jackson?
Dennis, do you want to? I believe.
These are actually your Raptor studies of your coverage.
Okay.
Everything that's blue is 100% covered.
Okay,
White is not covered, and pink is what they call TDI. That's where it's a simulcast system. It overshoots and causes a digital effect. So it's called
Okay.
TDI. Obviously, with Pinnacle here, it would create some TDI, but Ozaki would use it to shoot this area, and we would use it to shoot that area and use it as a microwave hub. But
Okay.
We've got 9 site designs and 8 site designs. Obviously, 9 site with Aaron is better. You'll get more coverage. We're just trying to
yeah,
see the finalized maps, and then I will put it in front of the sheriff and Rob over there and
yeah.
come up with the best game plan.
And I don't see a lot of pink or white on that map, but there are a few spots.
Yeah, there's like,
Yeah,
when you start getting up top and down here.
yeah.
This area right here over by Holy Hill, that's.
Okay, and
that's tough to
and I
cover.
see you have different maps there, those based on different
Yeah,
configurations.
9 site versus 8 site, and
Yeah,
I've got like 60 of these. I figured I'd just use
Yep.
it if I had to show you.
yeah,
When we get a finalized one, they'll go to the.
You know,
yeah,
it's important to know on those particular maps, there's a 9 dB, which is 12 dB maps, and that varies. Like a 9 dB structure, I want to make sure I'm referring to this correctly, is more like a residential wood construction. 12 dB is maybe a building more like this, more spancrete and rebar. But all of those maps are based upon portable coverage, not mobile coverage. The mobiles are the squad radios. That's 100% coverage throughout the county. That's specifically talking about an officer inside a house on
Yeah.
a portable radio.
yeah. So there's a few spots in the county on all those maps where where a deputy could be inside somebody's home and not have coverage.
It is, yes, it is
Yeah.
conceivable. It's not a perfect system.
Yeah.
It'd be very, very tough I mean, you could probably do it and get 100% coverage, but the price tag would be exponentially
Yeah.
higher.
Is that common for most counties to have a few?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. 95% portable coverage is a high standard to get.
Yeah.
So I would be willing to venture that a lot of systems don't have that level of coverage.
Yeah. Had another question here. I'm trying to think of it. Oh, I think one of the issues is making sure those non-coverage zones are not key areas. I remember hearing a couple of years ago that for a long time, St. Joseph's Hospital was a non-coverage zone. And I don't know if that was for our deputies or if that was for the municipal police or for both, but they could be in the hospital with somebody who had mental health issues. And if they needed the radio for help, they were in a dead zone. Are there any key when we look at these maps, are there key areas that have been identified, and are we sure those will have coverage?
So one of the options one of the good things about a 700 system is that they offer, you can get the acronym they right, but I think they're called VDAs. It's a kind of a little repeater system that can be placed inside buildings that could be problematic. That
Okay,
could be used in St. Joe. We don't need it right now because the 700 coverage is covering that.
yeah,
But let's say that there was an area like that, a business that could be placed inside a business to increase the coverage. The specific
Okay.
areas that you're seeing on the maps now, those the white areas. One of them that I thought was a little larger is kind of up in the northeastern part of Washington County. That's around the marsh area in Fillmore and Boltonville. So I mean, there's not even residential construction in those areas. I mean, a deputy could be out looking for a lost subject, and I mean, it's still possible that you'd be using the radios.
But it's not a key coverage area like a hospital might be, or a
Correct, yeah.
municipal building, yeah,
But even the 9 dB coverage is not intended necessarily for, the basement of St. Joe's. Yeah, so the 9 dB is literally residential construction. That's not to say you can't get out, but that 95 coverage is not meant to cover every square inch of every building.
so there could be small spots within St. Joe's where there wouldn't be coverage, like an elevator shaft perhaps, okay,
And just to show you an example, we
Yeah.
recently passed coverage testing at Ozaki.
yeah,
So this is a whole map of Ozaki. These pink areas I highlighted were areas that did not pass. The way you do that isn't by going into what Marty's talking about, a 9 dB or a 12 dB, or going into Fleet Farm and testing the radio. You have a test set up where the radio signal is attenuated to show that 12 dB or 9 dB. As you're driving out in the different areas, you'll get either a fail. The
Yeah.
mobile passes everywhere, especially at 700. But for portables at the hip, you'll get a fail. You're allowed to go 10, 15 feet and then test again. So there is certain areas to where a certain area may have had a fail, but there could have been 4 or 5 pass areas in there.
yeah,
So it's wireless. So
yeah,
anything wireless, 100%.
yep,
And Dennis, is the testing done at the hip? Is a radio at the hip, or is the antenna up?
The antenna is up on the car.
Okay.
To the speed. I mean, it wasn't as drastic as yours where we were doing 110 by 110 grids,
Okay.
but yeah,
yeah,
if we're driving too fast, we had to slow down, physically get out of the car, test at that point. But that shows you an idea. So we had 23 grids out of the whole county that failed.
Yep.
And that would be with our Pinnacle site is up over here.
okay,
That antenna could be radiated right down here, and that would get rid of some of the problems in Cedarburg in that area. So
yeah,
mutual, it would help you guys and it would
Yeah.
help them.
yeah,
So
okay,
brings the light a little bit better.
all right. Other questions? I know I've been asking a lot. I'm not seeing anybody chime in though.
And just one other point for you too. We had a police chiefs meeting last week, and it's still a very hot topic with all of public safety, law enforcement, and fire departments about the end user equipment, the actual radios, and who's funding that. That's not until stage 3 and 4. It's way down the line. But just so you're aware that the police chiefs are still cornering me a little bit, wanting our firm commitment, which I said I'm a proponent of, but I can't guarantee that. But I said we're moving in that direction. But just so you're aware, if you get the calls or anything from constituents or fire chiefs or police chiefs, that's still a very worrisome topic for them, is the funding of the end user equipment.
Yeah, they basically don't want to be forced to spend money on new equipment when they don't have a choice in it.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like right now we have 2 systems going. So either the old stuff or the new stuff works. But if we go to the new 700 system exclusively, the old stuff won't work anymore. They can't use
Yeah.
it.
And so all those departments that are currently just on the old system, they need to convert them.
Yes,
And they're basically forced into it.
Yeah,
and-
Kewaskum's a prime example. They
Yeah.
don't have any new radios whatsoever. Police department, fire department,
Yeah.
DPW. So they'd literally be forced to on
Yeah.
a new system.
Yeah, so I can understand that concern. Yep.
Best choices are good.
Not Whitney Styles, I'm just saying.
Yeah, okay,
A
so,
1-for-1 replacement, the best way to position it.
so did we cover everything we need to on the radio project update, or is there anything else we need to cover, or any other questions? Okay, I think we'll move on to the next item, which is the staffing study. And with the staffing study, I'm going to turn it over to the sheriff. But before I do, I want to make it clear that nothing in this discussion is about defunding police. I think that's contrary to our county's belief that public safety is our number one priority. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Marty.
Yeah, I guess I never even thought about it in that manner, but yeah, absolutely. So I've been asked to kind of broach this with the Public Safety Committee about the if there's a desire for the public safety to advocate for a separate staffing study done on behalf of a separate agency or a separate entity, looking at our operations, and be that if it's our patrol operations, detectives, the communications center, the jail operations, to see if how we relate to other agencies of similar size and demographics. So typically a staffing study is based on a couple of different things, either crime trends, a per capita model, officers per 1,000 residents, workload based models, just a couple of other minimum staffing models, authorized budget models. And I know we've done some internal studies of, and just basically on the per capita of officers per 1,000 residents. And we service about 55,000 residents in the county exclusively. We assist all the agencies, but so when we very just a snapshot, we think we're a little low in that as compared to other municipal departments, at least. But me saying that and us just doing an informal study, it might be of some advantage to have an independent look at what our staffing needs are, both short-term and long-term, understanding that municipal agencies are also expanding and annexing and coming, taking away our primary jurisdiction model areas. But I guess I just wanted to get I don't know the cost of it. So I apologize. I tried to reach out to it. There's a couple of different universities that do some of those. And I was trying to figure what is a cost for this type of study to be done. I don't have that for you, so I apologize. And it's certainly something I would get for the committee first. But I was just wondering if you thought there was an advantage or a desire to have that type of staffing study done for now and for the future. So it's really just a discussion item if you thought there was merit to it or not.
Okay, Supervisor Marquardt.
I guess my thought is, first of all, I'm never been a big fan of the comparisons to other entities. To me, that always has struck as keeping up with the Joneses kind of excuse, they have this, so we should have that too, kind of thing. And then I guess I'm new around here, so have these been done in the past at all, or?
I don't believe not for our department
Okay.
at all. I've been here 20, 26, 27, 20, something like that. And I don't think we've never had it.
Yeah, my impression, I think, is that you are sort of a separate elected entity, obviously. And you're going to bring your expertise to this committee to how your your feelings are in terms of being able to get your job done. And we're here to facilitate that to the extent, from a budgetary standpoint and so forth. So I think I would lean towards no on a study and rely on your expertise and your gauging of, the need for overtime and that, all of that kind of thing to properly do your job. And I would say no on the study.
Okay, yeah, and that's exactly what I was just looking for is the input. What I can tell you is that what was a little bothersome to me as far as our staffing levels is our staffing minimums have really remained unchanged for decades. We've besides second shift on patrol, we have a staff minimum of 6 officers, but both third shift and first shift, we've had staff minimums of 5 deputies per shift for literally 25, 30 years. It just seems to me that just based on that's the minimum staffing level that could be increased. And you're right, maybe you don't need a formal
Yeah,
study.
just based on population growth and number of calls and all those kind of things. I mean, you're the one that knows all of that information.
Yeah, I didn't know if it would be better to have an independent person, study corroborating that, or if just based on our observations of our internal needs, if there'd be an advocate.
That's my personal feeling.
Okay.
Okay, Supervisor or Chairman Krefel?
Yeah, 6 deputies on staff for 55,000 residents.
That's the minimum. We have
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
there's more, but I'm down the minimum. I don't want to give the impression it's only 6 all the
Yeah.
time. But
Yeah, well, in law enforcement for 30 years and, when you're highly staffed, it's certain times of the year when, vacations and whatnot aren't happening. But, yeah, I'm okay with a white paper too. The needs, where the staffing goes, where the calls are, how much of a, what worries me the most, I guess, when you have a smaller, minimum staffing is response time for backup. We're a pretty big county. And, if you're looking at 10 to 15 minutes, if you're involved in a fight with a individual and you got to wait 10 to 15, 20 minutes to get a backup out of it. And I know you get a lot of mutual aid with jurisdictions, but sometimes you're in the middle of nowhere in the county. And, so I want to make sure that not only are the people served appropriately, but I want the officers to be safe when they're performing their duties too. So, yeah, I would be happy with a white paper with that. I know I've looked at, I've talked with other departments. I know we're short-staffed. As opposed to, comparatively, I know but when you're looking at what per capita officers should be, and I think that information is readily available anyhow, what's recommended through either Northwestern or some of the other ones. But yeah, I think, we're going to we're looking at increasing staffing would be my initial impression on it. But yeah, I would be happy with you doing a white paper, and, convince the committee what is necessary to properly perform. So.
and I wouldn't be asking for the moon type of thing, but I'd like to be reasonable about it. It seems to me, having staff minimums of 6 and 6 on first, 6 on third, and 7 on seconds would be reasonable to me. I'm not asking for 25 cops in each shift.
Okay, I guess I kind of wanted to wait a little bit to share my thoughts. I'm okay with the white paper. I think there can be value in a study without knowing how much it costs to do a study. That makes it a little tricky, but the comparisons can have value, even though they may not always line up. I come out of a human resources background, and when you look at staffing, a lot of times ratios are used a lot. So for HR departments, the standard tends to be 1 full-time HR person for every 100 to 150 employees being supported. If you're a large organization that's heavily automated, you might get into the 1 per 200 to 300 range. So, when I look at the different models you have here, I can see some value in the per capita approach, the crime trends approach, the workload-based models with, how much overtime are we investing in deputies right now? And if we had more deputies, could that overtime be cut? Because, overtime, you're paying somebody literally time and a half. So there's automatic savings if hiring one deputy reduces 40 hours of overtime a week. That's an immediate savings there, even though it sounds like you're spending more money. So I guess, I would defer to your judgment as to whether you think a staffing study is affordable and valuable. But I could see some value in it. I could also accept a white paper with your recommendations based on what you're seeing as well, with response times for backups, response times for calls and crime trends, and support for other communities. Yeah, I know you've been very good about supporting the different municipalities in our county when they have issues that need support, like some of the recent rallies and protests and things of that nature. So, yeah, I guess that's my thoughts. Other thoughts on this? Supervisor Marquardt?
Yeah, I didn't mean to, denigrate the informative nature of some comparisons and that kind of thing. I just don't, I don't think we're questioning, the veracity of what you would bring forward in a comparison that way. And, we have to have an independent third party provide that for us. So, obviously, that does help inform how, your department is performing versus, neighboring counties or similar sized counties and that kind of thing. So,
Maybe what I could
coming
do
from
is,
you would be fine.
okay, yeah, maybe what I'll do is, if you don't, I'll just find out about approximate cost. If it's completely unreasonable, it's just a new point. Maybe you don't need a $40,000 study to tell you something you already know.
Yep. Okay, do we need any type of formal motion, or are we good with this as is? I kind of feel like we're good with it as is. Yeah, okay. So we'll move on to, unless there's any further discussion on this, let's move on to the Harris Space Contract Reconciliation.
So this, I just wanted to put on your radar, and apologize. I'm going to give you a little, it's going to be short, but I'll give you a little history of the radio project that I'm talking about. This is the project that we started in 2016, which was the $4.2 million 700 overlay that provided for better in-building coverage for municipalities, West Bend, Germantown, Hartford. So that is the system that we're proposing expanding now. So I'm talking about the original overlay to our old system, if that makes sense, that we started in 2016. So as I mentioned, it was a $4.2 million project. We signed the contract in May of 2016. We completed the project in December of 2018. During that 3-ish years, there are certain benchmarks that the contract indicates that we pay Harris Corporation for certain things that have been done. And we met several of those benchmarks throughout the process. Even signing the initial contract, I think it was like a $300,000 payment, and throughout the end. In December 18th, I believe, of 2018, we received the final Harris bill for that 700 radio project in the amount of $579,416.43. And the former sheriff paid that on January 4th of 2019, just a couple of days before I took office. So our understanding is that radio project was done, paid for. We moved on. We closed out that radio project account, knowing that we were going to be doing bringing this other 700 expansion program in front of the board as well. So in February of 2019, I was sent an email from Harris indicating that they had made some mistakes on their billings. And throughout the course of that entire project, and they were now asking for another $13,829.77 to bring us to make them whole. I advised them at that time that the radio project was done. We had paid for what we thought was the final bill. And if they were that intent on collecting this $13,000 out of a $4.2 million project, knowing that we have probably a $14 million project coming up with this one, that we could talk about it later. It went kind of silent for several months. And then Harris reached out to me again, indicating that they thought that they were due that $13,700. So what I invited them to do was to come in front of this committee this month and talk to you about it, because I thought that you would probably have some questions for them that I wasn't going to be able to answer. And I thought it was better for them to appear and answer those questions. Since then, they had said that they were not interested in taking and collecting that $13,700 invoice. But the quote that I was given is that they would simply roll it into the next program, the next project, meaning this upcoming one. So I guess I just want you, the committee, to be aware of that's Harris's position right now, is that they weren't interested in collecting this particular invoice for the 13.7, but they intend on somehow adding it to the project that we're contemplating, the $14 million project. I assure you that I'm going to look very closely at the contract and the invoicing. That I don't think that's appropriate. But I just wanted to let you guys know that that's Harris's position right now.
Well, I guess I have some concerns about that. I don't know how everybody else on the committee feels. If I can kind of start off the questions here. And I'm not familiar with how you're supported by our accounting and finance department. Do they look closely at all these bills as they come in, or are you doing all your own accounting and invoice review?
I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage because this was done under the former sheriff.
Yeah.
But I'm very certain that he worked very closely with finance on the billings. What disturbs me is, and I guess I'm not disputing the fact that we signed a contract for X amount of dollars. So we did that. I get it. But what bothers me is some of these mistakes that they found were dated back to July of 2016, and they're billing us several years later for their mistakes. And I just think that's maybe not a real great business practice. But I also don't dispute the fact that we owed them that particular money as well.
Okay, so you've looked at these invoices and you've looked at the contract, and there is that $13,000 difference?
Yes, it was. Yes, it's in there. It's in our contract. They made the mistake not billing us the appropriate amount.
Hey, Vay. Chairman Creefall.
Well, seems to me that if they made a mistake, it's kind of on them. And for them to actually come out and state that they're going to roll it into the next contract is really, really poor management on their point and poor business. You know, I mean, realistically, if they would have just said, okay, fine, we made a mistake, and then they would have built it in without saying they're going to build it in. But to put that out, now we're going to be watching for it. And, you know, that 13,000, I mean, you know, I mean, it was their mistake, but they had plenty of time to catch it. And I'm sure they have their own accounting. I'm sure they have their own auditing. And, you know, in the scheme of things, on a $4.5 million contract, we make a $13,000 mistake and you find out about it after the contract is done, I mean, most businesses are just gonna eat that. And I think that's what they should do. Period. End of story.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that.
I guess from my perspective, before you send out the final bill, you should be making sure everything's right. And on our end, maybe we need to have some sort of sign off at the end.
We did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they signed off saying they billed us in full?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, there's a system sign off agreement and that was all completed and done. And this was completely after the fact.
It kind of feels like case closed. And, one of the things that alarms me about this is we get a new county sheriff and all of a sudden new invoices and bills start appearing that are supposedly unpaid. And in this case, you look back and you can see the difference and you can see the 13,000. I definitely don't want to open up a floodgate to every vendor to come in and find unpaid bills that need to get paid all of a sudden. That just sounds rife with the potential for abuse. So, yeah, I'm not happy with the situation in general. They signed off that everything's paid in full. I'm of the opinion they're going to have to eat this. And if they don't like that, do a better job on your billing. Is this like a small mom and pop shop that has like a part-time billing clerk doing this? Or is this a pretty big company
Well,
with a full
here's
accounting?
Harris is an enormous company.
Yeah.
This $15 million-ish project that we're looking at is small potatoes to them. They do a national defense contracting, and I'm not even sure what their revenue is per year, but they are a huge company.
Because this is the kind of mistake you see from small mom and pop companies where they have a part-time billing clerk. And, if you're a big organization, you should easily be able to do the math right so that your final invoice is correct. So, yeah, I'm not in favor of paying this 13,000, and I agree we should be watching for this on future invoices as we roll into this upcoming contract.
And I did speak with the former sheriff, and it's a little tricky because so our final contract that we agreed upon, I'm sure we paid more than that because there was some change of work orders. For instance,
Yeah,
the tower on Jefferson in the city that had to be redone. That wasn't part of we didn't know that until after the fact. So what we paid was actually more than what the contract was. So that might have muddied the waters a little bit.
yeah. As we roll into the new contract, I assume accounting's going to be working real closely on that as well and watching change orders and making sure that we're not being overbilled on that.
Yeah, one of the things that we're doing a little different, that we're going to propose doing a little different with this particular project is using, it actually ends up saving money, believe it or not, using a third party to actually do let me back up a little bit. Harris, for this particular project that we're going to utilize them for supplying the equipment. That's pretty much it. We're going to have an independent contractor installing it and setting it up and doing the actual installation of it. So it probably will be a little easier to be able to look at an invoice from any particular business to figure out what they're doing, because we're separated a little bit. And in the end, it's more efficient for us. We've had some struggles getting projects completed with Harris. They're a good company, but we've had some struggles. And so the upcoming project, I think, will be a little easier to separate things and know exactly what we're paying for.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to watch our invoices real close with them because it sounds like their accounting practices need to be cleaned up a bit. So, other comments or questions, Chairman Creefall?
Yeah, I do recall that there's a lot of, I want to call it nickel and diming, but there are a lot of change orders that went all throughout this project, which all number one, it depleted our entire fund. I would hope that Harris is going to take a look at the video of this meeting. Let's let's just make sure that everything's above board and everything is, you know, I mean, we're negotiating in good faith. And we'll leave it there.
Yeah, I'd just comment that, you know, in my professional life, we track dozens of construction contracts every year. And the AIA form is pretty cut and dried for payment applications. You start with the contract amount, you add approved change orders into that, and then you start subtracting previous payments. And you get to a remaining contract value at the bottom. So, I mean, if you follow that method, this would never happen. You'd still say, well, you know, what you've billed doesn't match what the contract was. So what about this other dollar amount? And you'd either be a deduct change order to even that out, or you'd owe them that. So I don't quite understand how this doesn't happen in a situation like this.
That's why I was almost hoping that they would appear today,
Yeah.
so you could ask them those very questions.
So exactly. So, but I mean, that way, both the billing entity and the paying entity knows where you are at in the contract status. And it just seems like a simple way of tracking that.
Okay, I think we have all the discussion we need on this. So unless there's further discussions, let's move on to the action item with the furniture purchase.
So this might actually be a short discussion because I was really hoping somebody from finance or the county executive administration would be here, because they were going to hopefully provide some insight into this. So I had we had a furniture study that we did in 2019, I think July. And what we were looking at is some of the furniture in the sheriff's office is old and falling apart. It's literally, we built the building in 1979, and a lot of the furniture was bought during that time. So we were looking at different ways. You know, could we rehab the existing furniture or not? And what we did, we had a internal committee that came up with a long-term furniture plan addressing those in different stages. And the first one is wants versus needs. I mean, a lot of times there's a lot of people, well, we really need to have versus what do we really need. So we kind of did this furniture study and did it in different tiers of wants versus needs. And initially I broached the topic with the county administrator at the time, if this is something that would be a CIP project, or is it better just to do it small incrementally, you know, just take care of the needs first, and we can evaluate it later on. And what I was advised to do is just take it off in smaller chunks, and so that's what I had proposed in this coming budget year. I had proposed doing the sergeant's office in our for the operations. That's the old furniture that's very, very dated. And literally the laminate and stuff is coming off duct tape and stuff on it. And the jail briefing room, which we still haven't been able to get a tour of it. Once you walk through that area, you'll know what I mean. There's a single matching chair in there. It works, but it would be nice to have it in a more professional area. So I had put in, I think it was $50,000 to do those two areas. I think even the jail, the operations briefing room, so that's what I was just going to do. Is that those were the immediate needs that I was real concerned about. So I had that in my budget, and then during the budget meetings, it was asked of me that they thought I should take that $55,000 out of the budget for next year and do it right away. And that's where I was a little confused, where I didn't know where the money was coming from. And then they made the comment during that meeting that they would rather do the entire project at once. So I didn't know what that meant. The whole wants, needs, the whole package, which I don't necessarily think that's needed at this point. I'd rather do what I need to do. But that's where it was left. And then finance had asked me to put this on the public safety agenda for an action item. But
But then they're not here.
I guess I don't know where they're thinking the money is coming from. to do this. So, having them not here, I guess I'd be uncomfortable you making any motion because I don't exactly know what you're asking for.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the, and did you put together the committee report or did?
Yeah, I did.
finance?
That,
Okay,
yes,
because it refers to, COVID relief funding.
that's what I thought they were referring to. And then I had a separate meeting with the county executive. We have kind of bi-monthly meetings, and he wasn't quite sure where that funding was, and he was going to talk to the finance director. And that's why I was hoping that they would be
And-
here today.
Yeah, and we don't have them here. Is there any kind of deadline for this?
I thought the CARES money, I thought had to be spent by the first week of November.
Okay, so
So I
there is
know
a time crunch on this,
Yeah.
but there's, yeah, I don't want to write a blank check either and then find out this isn't CARES money and,
Yeah, so I know the 55,000 that I was originally going to spend next year was taken out of my budget.
yeah.
But from that, I don't know.
Can we get a hold of Margie? We just have email. We don't have a phone. We don't have a phone down here, do we? Oh,
Do we want to take a couple minute recess while we
sure.
see if we can get somebody from
Yeah.
finance here?
Yeah, I'd like to see how this folds into the CARES Act money, if that's what they're gonna do. I know they've given us a wide, initially it was supposed to be very narrowly. And it has tended to really gotten wide where the CARES Act money can be used. So, if that's the case here, I'd like to, before we make a motion, because if we
Yeah.
don't make a motion now, you know,
We're not gonna have
we're
a
not-
meeting
you're
before
not gonna get
November
it.
first.
You're,
Yeah,
the process will stop.
yeah. And so I think we really need to know more information. So,
Yeah, I apologize.
Yeah.
I was just kind of asked to put it on the agenda for
yeah, and then,
that.
so, it's, 200 and Okay, are we back in open session? Okay, we're back in open session, or back from recess, I should say. So kind of reviewing this, one of the things I want to make sure of is we're not in a situation where the feds are going to come back and audit this and say these aren't eligible and we've already spent the money. Is there anybody here who's familiar enough with this to know if that's a possibility, or, what the oversight is, or if the federal government is basically giving us a blank check, or I,
My understanding is, as we've gone through our COVID task force meetings and discussions with it, is that initially, like I said, initially we had a very narrow scope where we could use, it couldn't be used for budgetary things, it couldn't be used for CIP. It had to be used for expenses over and above due to COVID, but as time has gone by, that has expanded considerably. So I've heard of a number of other agencies that have used CARES Act money, and you try to, okay, how do you justify that that's related to COVID? But so I think, and I think in this one, I think we give, I always say we give the executive the authority to use the CARES Money Act if that fits this. So I think we're kind of under the gun now. We really need to
yeah,
have an action on it that.
yeah, because we're hitting a time deadline, and
Yeah.
unless we're gonna try to do an emergency meeting before November 1st, which has its own challenges. I look at the time frame of this, and yeah, maybe we need some sort of motion that's got a lot of open-endedness to it that gives authority to the county executive to review its eligibility. What I don't want is to spend this money and the feds come back and say, oh, nope, that's not eligible. And then they did. And the way the feds recoup that money is they deduct it from other money they're giving you. Maybe Medicare funding for human services expenses or whatever else it might be. And now we got a big budget shortfall 2 years down the road to cover this ineligible expense that at the time we think is eligible. So yep.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, and that makes it tricky if it's not COVID funds. And the reports does say COVID funds. So if it's not COVID funds, then we don't have the urgency to act on this today. And some of the furniture wears out. Some of this furniture has been around 40 years. Some of it's in bad shapes. We talk about needs versus wants. I want the needs taken care of. The wants are things that we can review and figure out. And it's different if the feds are giving us money that we're going to lose anyway. And this is something we can spend it on, or if they're not. And if this is not CARES Act money, then
Yeah, one thing, that fiscal effect, usually on the CARES money, fiscal effect would be zero.
yeah,
And it
Yeah.
says up to $250,000.
yeah.
So maybe it is not CARES Act money.
I wrote the committee report thinking it was. That's the impression I got, but I wouldn't say for sure it is. That not based on
Yeah.
that. This is just what I was advised when I was writing the committee report.
Yep. Yeah, I know we're all kind of thinking through this, trying to figure this out. What's the best approach to this?
If it's not CARES Act funding, probably, what is the motion? It wouldn't be to table. The motion would be to postpone to the next meeting. Motion to postpone. Till we have enough information to actually.
Yeah,
make a decision.
I think that's what we,
the use of COVID funds with the understanding that if it is COVID funds, that you would call a special meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah, we did come back.
yeah. I think that's what we'll have to do. It sounds, can I get a motion to postpone pending information on whether or not this is covered by COVID funds? Okay, motion by Supervisor Milliken,
Second.
second by Supervisor Markwart. Is there discussion on that motion?
Yeah,
No.
I would just comment that if this isn't COVID funds, I was going to suggest exactly what the sheriff said was address needs and postpone the wants and other things to future years. So I'm in favor of postponing.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion to postpone signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, and the motion carries. So we will postpone this until we know more about COVID funds, knowing we may need to call an emergency meeting to act on this. So, yep. Yeah, yeah, yep. Okay. All the action items are on here. Next meeting date is going to be Wednesday, November 18th. I have invited Wendy Smith, who's a co-founder of Washington County's Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force, which is a private organization. I've invited her to present to us to talk about human trafficking in Washington County, the nature of that problem, the scope of it, and the work her group is doing to help combat that. I think that'll be a worthwhile presentation. So just want to give everybody a heads up on that. And otherwise, having no further business, we're adjourned.